Why
And
do so many people in India, especially the people in power or the people in the government, why do they continue to allow this? Because I can understand how an uneducated poor person could be indoctrinated to believe in ridiculous, harmful things, but the alternative to that or the inverse is that educated people who come from some sort of, they have the wherewithal to learn things would actually recognize how harmful this is to society. So why are the people in the higher caste continuing to accept that this is how India should be?
no, officially, it is a lot of this is stuff is illegal, right? The dowry system. I don't know if it's illegal, but it still happens because India is such a huge country, and with such a massive population, it is almost like, if you go down, I'm sure if you go down deep south, there's still places where there's slavery, right? Not like near slavery, like
Hmm.
massive social racial discrimination, right? So you can't fully root out the evils. And in India, because of the lack of infrastructure, the lack of strong government, they just can't enforce it because of the population, which is like 5 times that of the US, right? And probably one third the size of the US. So population density is heavy. Enforcing rules are very difficult, and in India, the people at the highest levels of government are not necessarily all that educated. You're not getting
Hmm.
lawyers and blue chips college people going into politics. A lot of these people are in the lower forms of government are literally thugs. They came out of it's almost like you see in the movies in you see in Mexico all these people. You don't see that many movies about India, but if you see in how the narcos and TV shows like that, you see people with a lot of corruption and greed, and you have to literally bribe your way to any basic government seat, which means they have paid a lot of money to get to that point, which means the first thing they do when they get there is try to collect at least 100 times. So which means that's how corruption just grows and grows and grows. A cop catches you without your, let's say, helmet is a rule. You have to wear your helmet when riding a bike, and if he catches you without a helmet, now remember, he got to be a cop because he had to bribe somebody else to get into the police system. So which means he has spent a lot of money, so he's trying to collect back what he has paid. So his first option is to say, you know what, uh, if you bribe him, he'll take it, rather than you having to go to a court and give you a ticket and all that stuff. I have bribed so many times because there used to be no court. And back when I was in India, there was no local mobile court system, which means if the guy, the cop, took out because of you didn't wear your helmet, or you didn't look at him the right way, whatever it was, they could use any excuse to pull you over. And if you didn't bribe him and give him what he wants, they're literally taking your keys to your bike, and you won't get it back for 2 weeks because he's going to take it into some police station. They're not going to tell you where. Now you got to have to bribe a whole bunch of people before you find out where it is. Then you get to the cop station. Then you have to bribe a whole bunch of more people to get your bike out. By the time a lot of parts are missing, the gas is gone, the whatever you have
Oh,
there's
wow.
like 1,000 times more hassle. So if he says, pay me 500 rupees and I'll let you go, you pay it. So it was part of corruption, was absolutely a very common thing when I was growing up. You literally could not get anything done. Nothing. You cannot even get the death certificate. I had to bribe somebody to get my mom's death certificate after she died, because I had to go to the banks and deal with account closing and claim life insurance and all that stuff. And we're talking 2000, late 2000s here. So I had to bribe somebody to get her uh, death certificate. And you want a driver's license, you're gonna have to bribe the guy. I'm sure a lot of it has changed and improved in the last 20 years, but I doubt it, because it was rampant when I was there. So you want to get a driver's license, you gotta bribe the driving school guy not the school, but the guy who gives you the test, because if you don't bribe him, he's gonna fail you. So anything you want to get done, you have to bribe them.
You earlier in this conversation, it seemed like you were trying to make a real clear distinction that this isn't religious. So to me, though, what you're describing is, at least in the fundamentalist domain, rather dogmatic. Where do these laws or rules, as opposed to suggestions, come
Right.
from?
Oh, they're all man-made, just like humans changed the New Testament drastically compared to the Old Testament, right? They rewrote lots of part and removed slavery and all that stuff. Same way, people are just making stuff up as they go, and the more fundamental they are, and they co-opt religion and say, "Oh, women have to be respectful. They have to dress properly. They should cover their arm." Just like at least in Islam, you can say that some of those things, like wearing a burqa, may be part of their religion. I don't know if it's in the Quran, but there's no such thing in Hinduism. There's not a single place where it says women should cover their legs, but it has become co-opted, right? And because men are making this stuff up, and like in all religions, it's always right, the amount of misogyny and everything else in religion, you can say for sure that everything was made up by men.
Yeah, it's
And
just like in the United States, Caleb, where women back in the day were not supposed to wear long pants. They were supposed to wear skirts, but they had to be long skirts. They couldn't be mini skirts because that was scandalous. And there's nothing in the Bible that says what kind of, clothing women should wear, unless they're going to church. They're supposed to have their head covering, but the Bible doesn't say women should dress like this or men should dress like that. God apparently gave Adam and Eve sheepskins or whatever, but no
yeah,
one takes that seriously.
That's pretty fair.
As much as we like to fancy ourselves equal rights, women are equal to men. Consider the history of this country. We've had 46 presidents, and they've all been 100% of them have been male. You cannot lead this country and have a vagina. At least there's no evidence that you can. We've had many
Right.
women run for well, actually we haven't had many run, but we've had a couple run. But and there's all kinds of excuses given as to why they wouldn't have been good. But there are people who just flat out openly admit it's a man's job, So
Right. And women
certainly
always,
half of the country, or 40% of this country, still actually thinks that. They do not think that a woman should be president. So
right, and women always were the last to get their freedoms, right? Right to vote, right to
they don't make as much as
education.
men.
Yeah, education, still there's the inequality and the criticism of, and the WNBA versus NBA and so on and on and on, right? There's always discriminated against.
Have
And
you watched the Olympics recently?
yeah, I've been following a little bit.
You know the women's handball or beach volleyball? Do you know that
Yeah,
their uniforms are
I
quite
actually,
different?
yeah, I actually tweeted out about that, and I said, the two extremes of religion is I tweeted a picture of the women's handball on wearing shorts, and they were fined for that. And on the right, I posted a picture of a model of three models wearing the same nice fancy dress that my wife was wearing when she got kicked out of a restaurant. So I said,
Yeah.
religion is
This
evil. I tweeted about that.
this is a man's world. It's always man's interpretation of religion. And in that interpretation, women have to be either wearing more clothes than they want or less than they want. But they can never wear the amount of clothes that they want.
Yeah, exactly. So my title for the two pictures on the left and right was too much for the handball women, and too little for the people who are actually wearing a lot more. And when
Yeah.
my wife got kicked out, it's crazy. The hypocrisy is insane.
I'd like to know if you could kind of educate me and Caleb on the Hindu gods, because one of the questions Caleb started to ask was, is it monotheistic? Is it polytheistic? I know Brahma, I know Vishnu, I've heard a couple of other gods given, Krishna, but who are the Hindu gods? How many are there? What are their ranks? And maybe you could explain that, because I'm sure there's probably a lot of other theists and who don't know much about Hinduism and would be curious to know that as well.
Right. So we have 33 million gods.
Whoa.
Right. And not all of them are, like, a lot of them are demigods, right? But they're still worshipped as a god.
Mhm.
And there's the Holy Trinity: Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, or Maheshwara is Shiva. You might have heard the Lord of Death, right? So that's the Holy Trinity, the three gods. And then from there, everything else flows down sideways. They're all demigods. And then a lot of
You
them
mean to
are.
tell me there's a Holy Trinity in
Yes.
Hinduism?
Yes.
I thought that was only a Christian thing. I thought the uniqueness of Christianity was that they have a Trinity, and that this is something Christians came up with, and that's what sets Christianity apart. I have been misled.
They just copied, I guess, because Christianity is much younger than Hinduism, right?
Yeah.
They're by tens of thousands of years old, and but it's not the same kind of the Trinity in Christianity. It's actually three separate gods, and one is the creator of the universe, Brahma, and then Vishnu is the god of gods, and Shiva is the god of death and destruction. And then there's a lot of the women gods, and a lot of them are reincarnations of Vishnu, like Krishna was a reincarnation of Vishnu, Rama, and there's the 10 reincarnations of Vishnu. It's called the Dashavatar, 10 avatars. Dasha means 10. So there's the 10 avatars of Vishnu, where he came to Earth as different. He didn't always come as a human. Sometimes one time he came as a turtle to lift the, you might have heard about that from Hinduism, where he had to do something. I'm so out of touch now. But he had to lift the world up because the poisonous waters and all kinds of stuff. So every time he came down, and Krishna is probably easily the most famous avatar, because of Krishna consciousness, ISKCON, and everything else, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, and a lot of it, one of the most popular gods in Western culture. And
I only know Krishna from the Hare Krishnas at the airport back when I was a kid.
Exactly. So, so there's and each avatar is kind of a philosophical thing of to show that that different. One time he came to help humanity in terms of he had some supernatural powers. Another time he was half man, half animal, and not Vince Carter, and half man, half amazing. So
Wes wants to know if Buddha was considered one of the reincarnations of Vishnu.
I'm not sure entirely. Might be.
Okay. Yeah, wow, that is very different than. First of all, thank you for explaining that, because like Caleb and I both said when we started the show, we didn't know very much about Hinduism because it's not the dominant religion in our country.
Right.
And it seems like different Hindus, which is unsurprising, have different explanations and different interpretations of what Hinduism is. So,
so everything is about, they wanted long time back, they wanted farmers to be able to protect their cows. Mm-hmm. So they deemed the cow as a holy animal, so that people stop killing these cows, because cow is a life provider, right? Milk and protein and it rears other cows, and and cow dung, which is used manure, which is used for medicinal purposes. And if in the villages, many years ago, I don't know if they still do it, but cow dung is used to build walls and shelter, and to seal, make things waterproof. So manure has a huge number of medicinal and practical utilities. So they wanted to protect that, because people are savages, they'll kill anything that moves and eat them. So they made it as a holy animal, and today you literally get killed if you harm a cow. And so everything has some kind of a, just like people were scared of lightning and rain and Thor, they called it Thor, and and so on. They in India, they make everything into a god so that you don't kill it or harm it. The snake is a god which appears in the stories, um, and it's supposed to be the serpent above Lord Vishnu's head while he's reclining. So the snake is a holy thing, and the rat is Lord Ganesh. So you don't kill rats, but of course they still do if the rat is harmful and running around. But they will say a prayer or say sorry for having killed a rat. So it's all a lot of these come from these stories, but there's no real discrimination against women or any such thing built into the religion. It's all like majority of what it has become today, and what I'm rejecting is what people have turned it into.
It's amazing that you can have a society built on religious principles or cultural principles that outlaw the killing of a cow, but at the same time allow for the whipping and sodomizing of human beings.
Right. Human beings definitely have less value in our culture than what are deemed to be holy. And because of the size of the country and population and everything else, it's almost impossible. And there's just so much corruption that even if you can literally get away with murder by bribing somebody. So
How long have you been doing your podcast, and how do you see it growing in the future? Any idea about the type of topics? I know I mentioned in the beginning that it's primarily focused on secularism and atheism, but how do you see your podcast growing from where it began?
yeah, it's almost like a self-discovery process. I want to touch upon superstitions and how it has. I want to tie everything back uh, to our religion, our culture, and how things are hurting people today. The pseudosciences of astrology and palmistry, all right, mystics and godmen and godwomen, and how all the different superstitions. I want to throw light on all the fallacies. So I would just want to educate people, and more than saying uh, religion is evil, I want to focus on getting people to think rationally and scientifically and question everything that they have known from childhood, that all the indoctrination, and try to uh, make them think scientifically so that they don't propagate nonsense and they don't believe in nonsense. The one of the examples I give is, if you have been if somebody told you when you were a child that there's this bank that exists, and you have to put money in an envelope and send it to this bank, and before you die you will get it like thousand, it'll multiply by 1,000 times, and you'll get all the money you want for you and your loved ones. And then on your deathbed you find out that this bank never existed. The whole thing was a fraud, and you'd be kicking yourself and saying, why didn't somebody tell me this before? I only wish somebody told me this before. And that's the person I'm trying to be, to say that this bank doesn't exist. Don't waste your money putting it in an envelope and sending to a non-existent address where somebody's probably putting it in his pocket. There's no bank, and you're not getting it back.
I love that example, and I love that you were using it as sort of this hypothetical analogy. But the irony for me is that's actually a true story, at least in terms of people, saving money or giving money. There's this concept in Christianity called tithing, where
Tithing, yeah.
people donate their money to God or the church or religion or whatever. They don't really know where it goes to. But they donate this money and then believe that they're going to heaven, where the Bible says they will be rewarded, with treasure in heaven. So it's funny to me that you use that example where that's literally built into kind of the religion here. But we are coming up near the end of the show. Did you have any final questions, Caleb, or final thoughts about our guests and Hinduism and India and all of that?
Sure. If it's possible if you could just be as brief as possible, rather. I was hoping you might be able to expound on sort of the nature of this polytheism in its relationship with reincarnated gods. So let's say that God C is reincarnated 3 or 4 times. Are the reincarnations aware that they are reincarnations? And simultaneously, are the reincarnations, assuming we believe that these are real gods, are these reincarnations meant to exist simultaneously with the thing that they reincarnated from? Like, if you're reincarnated from the god of gods, does that god cease to be as long as
Right,
you
you're
exist?
talking about the time and space continuum, right? If you disappear from one point and go into the future, do you really exist in the past? It's almost like that, but it's supposed to exist because obviously God, right? So the original version is supposed to exist. Hi, how are you? Um, so yes, the reincarnation is supposed to be for the benefit of humanity, and one of the reincarnations, Lord Rama, is very similar to what Jesus Christ, God came. God in Christians call it Jesus Christ is the Son of God, but you also hear God sent Himself as a human. He's His Son, but He's also Him, kind of thing, right? In this,
Right.
there's no Son concept. Literally, Vishnu is reincarnates Himself and comes to Earth as a human without any powers. So no, the reincarnations do not know, except for maybe Krishna, who's like the god of is like the ultimate Loki type character, a lot of mischief, a lot of naughtiness, and he has all powers. He has superpowers. He uses his superpowers. But every other reincarnation, none of them have any superpowers. Most of them don't have, and they try to the constraint is part of the reincarnation, that if you're born as a human, then the human reincarnation goes through the trials and tribulations of being a human, does not have any superpowers, cannot fly, cannot recreate, bring people back from the dead, goes through suffering and death and everything else. So the reincarnations do die in Hinduism. All the reincarnations die and they don't come back at all. So part of it is God sacrificing Himself for the sake of humanity. So they're very similar concepts.